Hey, welcome to The Rock. This is where we talk about the Bible and Christian living. Always with me is my brother Chris and our buddy Zach. In a previous video, I talked about the proof of the physical existence of Jesus Christ. Today, I want to do the same, but about the resurrection of Jesus after his crucifixion. After the Last Supper, Jesus was betrayed by one of his disciples, Judas, and arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was then taken through a series of Jewish and Roman trials, including being tried by Annas, Caiaphas, and Pontius Pilate, where he was then sentenced to be crucified. Following his sentencing, Jesus was scourged, mocked, crowned with thorns, and forced to carry his own cross to Golgotha before being crucified. Then Jesus' body was taken down from the cross after his death, wrapped in spices, and then placed in the tomb. The tomb was sealed with guards posted, and after 3 days, Jesus rose from the dead, spent 40 days on earth, and ascended to heaven. Now, there are a lot of skeptical people out there that think that Jesus never existed or being risen from the dead was impossible. So here are a few facts that prove that these events happened, to include biblical, non-biblical, and archaeological evidences. So first we have the biblical documentation. So first to note is that the Bible is comprised of multiple, extremely scrutinized historical documents, not fairy tales or stories, but they're written historical events about God's true love story for us. Firstly, we have the empty tomb of Jesus Christ, and the three main proofs or facts about the empty tomb. These facts are that women were the first ones to have found the tomb and testified to have found the tomb, the empty tomb, that it was empty, and the actions of the Jewish leaders after the fact, and thirdly, the transformation of those that followed Jesus. So first we have that women found the tomb. So in John 20, 1 through 18, it reads, "Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved, and said, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and I don't know where they have put him.'" So you can see here that in this passage that it claims that Mary, a woman follower of Jesus, was the first to find the tomb, talk to Jesus, and give the accounts to the disciples, who had then in turn wrote all of this down. So now during this time, having women as witnesses or giving testimony was uncommon. Basically, women were thought of as unreliable, especially as a key witness to one of the most important events in human history, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So women were also socially and legally marginalized, treated as insignificant because of being part of a specific cultural group, which contributed to the idea that the perspectives were not to be taken seriously, leading to both Jewish and Roman officers with legal traditions that often did not accept the testimony of women as credible in court. For instance, the historian Josephus noted that some believed women's testimonies should not be trusted because of their levity or boldness, labeling them as historical or mad. So when the Gospels wrote that women found the tomb, it was actually come out as what they call embarrassing or unauthentic. But this actually proves that what happened really happened. So using what they call the criterion of embarrassment, a tool that historical analysis they use to determine if a story is viable. This happens when the facts, events, or timelines in the document would have caused the people or person who wrote the document to have been discredited by embarrassment or scrutiny. So if the events weren't true. And then that's the same in the case where the women were the first ones to find the tomb. The next fact is we have the empty tomb itself. The gospel accounts of the tomb being found empty on a Sunday morning are corroborated in the fact that Jesus' enemies accused his followers of stealing his tomb, or stealing his body from the tomb, which would only make sense if the body was missing in the tomb for the first place. In Matthew 28, 11 through 15, it reads, "While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, 'You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while you were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble.' So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed." So here are some counter arguments that the leaders at the time argued about that might have happened to the cause of the empty tomb. Firstly, we have the tomb that was not empty, but it was simply mistaken location. But the Roman government and the Jewish leaders could have easily went to the tomb and shown that Jesus' body was still there. Secondly, the disciples stole the body and started the resurrection stories themselves. But his followers died for what they believed in. The soldiers guarding the tomb were another factor, and then the fact that he has been continuously watched and surveyed continuously because of everything that happened during the crucifixion. So making the point that taking the body without being seen or caught, practically impossible. And the third, Jesus did not really die on the cross, but was taken down and revived. But this is countered by reports of the Roman guards, the spear wound, which scientists to this day have concurred that the type of wound that was made with the clear fluid and blood mixing could not have been survived, especially in this period of time. And the body being in this tomb for a long period of time. So we had the women with the first testimony, and then we had the empty tomb. So now we come to the appearance after the resurrection. These appearances include various individuals such as Peter, James, other disciples, in a group of over 500 people at one time. The Gospels and the Apostle Paul report that Jesus appeared alive to his disciples and many others after his crucifixion. We see this in John 20:19, where Jesus appears to his disciples. On verse 19, on the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for the fear of Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you," which is also mentioned in Luke 24:36-7, where it states, while they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh or bones, as you see I have." So we see that even the disciples themselves had a hard time with this, even seeing all the miracles Jesus has done, to the point that they had to physically see and inspect his body, as one of the disciples, Thomas, did when he pushed his fingers into Jesus' spear wound. Then we have the appearance to the 500 in 1 Corinthians 15-6, which reads, "After that, he appeared to more than 500 of his brothers and sisters at the same time, most of them who are still living, though some of them have fallen asleep, confirming now that after what Jesus has done for us, that those that believed in him were not dead, but are simply sleeping, awaiting the return of Jesus at his second coming." Just like that, like when you are a passenger in a car and you fall asleep, and then, boom, you're at your destination. Like time flew and you had no idea. So the last appearance I want to talk about is Paul, who initially was persecuting Christians and converted after a powerful personal encounter with Jesus, became a very key proponent of the historical event of the resurrection, as seen in Acts 9:1-19, or 1-9, Saul's conversion. So in verse 9, meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, aka those who believe in Jesus, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go to the city, and you will be told what to do after that." The men traveling with Saul stood there speechless as they heard the sound, but they did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could not see anything. So they led him by the hand to Damascus, and for 3 days he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. The last biblical fact is the apostles' transformation. The same men who had abandoned Jesus in the fear of their arrest became bold and courageous in their preaching of the resurrection. They faced persecution and martyrdom, even death, for their faith, which is seen as unlikely if they knew the resurrection was a lie. So we have James, son of Zebedee, who was beheaded by King Herod around 44 AD. Andrew was crucified in an X-shaped cross pattern in Greece around 60 AD. Peter was crucified upside down in Rome at his own request because he didn't want to die in the same way Jesus did. We have Philip was executed in what it would be modern day Turkey. Bartholomew was martyred in Armenia or India, possibly by being filleted alive. Matthew was martyred in Persia, possibly by stabbing by spear. Thomas was stabbed by a spear in India. And Simon the Zealot was martyred in Persia by crucifixion. Then we have Jude, who was martyred in Persia by being beaten alive by a club. Then we have James, son of Alphaeus, was also beaten, stoned to death. We have Matthias, chosen to replace, who replaced Judas, was stoned and beheaded for his faith. Then we have John, which according to the 2nd century tradition, the Apostle John was boiled in oil under the Roman Emperor Domitian, but miraculously survived, which then he became the only apostle believed to have died by natural causes at a very old age, around 100 AD. After being exiled to the island of Patmos, where he wrote the book of Revelations. So all these men died for what they truly believed in. And like I said a second ago, you wouldn't do this if you had any doubts or any questions about what happened. Then we had the rapid spread of Christianity from Jerusalem, a city where the tomb could have easily been proven to contain Jesus' body, which further supports the belief that the apostles' message believed to be true. As stated in a previous video, there are non-biblical sources supporting the resurrection narrative also. We have Roman historians like Tacitus or Saxenus, which mention Jesus' crucifixion under Pontius Pilate, and the early Christians who believed in him. Then we have Jewish historians, Josephus, which discusses Jesus, his brother James, and refers to Jesus actually as the Messiah who was crucified. And then we have early Christian sources, writings from Christian leaders like Ignatius and Polycarp, who were contemporaries or near contemporaries of the apostles, which attest to the belief of Jesus' resurrection. And then we have archaeological evidences. As again mentioned in the previous video, we have the Pilate stone, which in the inscription confirms the existence of Pontius Pilate himself, the one that crucified Jesus. Then we have a heel bone for someone crucified like Jesus with the crucifixion nail still embedded within it, which confirms Roman crucifixion practices. This statement is based on the archaeological findings, specifically the remains of a 1st century man named Yohanan, whose heel bone was pierced by a crucifixion nail, discovered in Jerusalem in 1968. This is the only real physical evidence of Roman crucifixion from that era, though the practice was common based on historical texts. But in 2021, a similar finding was made in England, providing more evidence for the practice of Roman crucifixion in the Roman world. So here we have more evidence of Jesus being here on earth, and that he died for our sins, rose 3 days later, and ascended into heaven to sit on the right side of the Father. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you today. And if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. If you have any questions or if there's something you really want to learn or hear about, please feel free to ask. Until next time.